Meeting back to order at 9. Just one thing I'm talking to people or just listening before. There's a reopening task force. There's a board representative. There's a board on that task force.
Sure. Yeah, you are on that now.
Oh, I am on that now.
Congratulations.
So let me write that on my list.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you very
And you have a report to it.
Why did you bring it up again? Remind me? Okay, let's reopen the task force. Okay, so we were through the consent agenda. Now it is time for the community council proposal.
Mr. Chair, would you like Ms. McPhee to perhaps
I would.
provide some context?
I would love that. Please.
For the protection.
Yes.
So this proposal was there was rules in place saying that the school nurses couldn't give out condoms or other forms of protection if students asked for them. And this proposal was kind of taking that away so that the nurses had the option to give out condoms, but they weren't required to. And that wasn't something that would come from the school's budget. It was just something that the nurse would provide.
And that was passed by community council already. Was it, can I ask what the vote was at community council?
I'm not sure exactly what it was, but there was a strong majority in favor of it. And there wasn't too many negative comments that I heard.
So tonight, Mr. Chair, if I may, Mike and his team have provided some recommendations around this particular proposal. If you're comfortable, Mr. Berry, I'd like to ask you to present those. This evening, this is a highly charged topic, to be sure. And so I would encourage the board to not endeavor to make a decision this evening, but instead to direct us as administration about what further information or guidance you might need in order to make a decision around August. And so it could be that as a board, you folks say we have no interest in repealing these policies, issue over. Fine, tell us that. You could say we're 100% in support of this. There's no more information we need. We're ready to make a decision tonight. Fine, that's your decision to make. If you're anywhere in the middle, I would suggest you give us a list of the information and further guidance you'd like us to collect so that we can further inform you in August. That's just my suggestion to you folks. But with that, with your permission, Mr. Chair, I'd like Mr. Berry to present the school administration's perspective.
Absolutely, please.
So in preparation for this evening, sat down, knowing that the proposal made its way through community council, wasn't coming before the school board. Our conversations with members of community council and other students throughout the building, we started to kind of gain their perspective, and we came up with a couple things. At the end of the day, it's the school board's decision. We're providing information to you, or providing our take on it. So we're aligned with community council as the admin team. We're aligned as a student service office, that includes the counselors, school psych, school social worker, and we are waiting to talk to the incoming school nurse to get her take on this. But we did a little bit of research, and if this policy was repealed, we're in support of not only potentially providing contraceptives, but also talk about provide barriers for safe sex practices and more of an overall education. That is definitely something that we would do. It's not like we're going to be advertising and passing out contraceptives in the building, but it would be more of an overall, safety and wellness approach to this. We did our research around CDC. We did a research around the latest YRBS, report. One of the things that a number of us we're not surprised, but just thought it was a little low, that 23% of the students reported they were currently sexually active. People are under the idea that it might have been more. The other number that came out is, of those students who are sexually active, 60% reported that they did not use birth control pills. 40% reported of these that are sexually active that They did not use condoms. And so that was kind of influencing counselors, social workers kind of take on this. So our research, gives us the confidence that if it was repealed, and we would take the measures to educate the student body about safe sex practices, remove some of the barriers in our building, and be prepared to implement this. That was our take as a admin and student service.
Would you not already be currently giving that education portion of it through health class or
Yeah,
other ways?
yeah, we do.
So that's not a change.
That's not a change. I think you can see a little bit on how we run our Monday morning meetings, and it's just talking about resources students have. We're gonna have a Monday morning meeting where it's basically a whole school advisory on Mondays, grades 9 and 10, and 11 and 12. And one of the piece that we're talking a little bit about that schedule is, providing the opportunities for students within the school and the resources available to them. And so when we talk a little bit about that, that's kind of what we reference.
My question, and I think I'd like to maybe hear advice from legal counsel, Mr. Superintendent. We have non-consenting aged people in our school. What are we potentially opening ourselves up to? Providing condoms to either underage or of age, and then something happens to a non-consenting age. Could someone say, well, you're promoting it because you're handing it? I don't know. But I think because we have underage, or not really non-consenting age kids in the school, I'd like to understand the legal ramifications.
Okay, so the age of consent in New Hampshire is 16, as I understand it. But I'll have to find out more about what happens with people under age 16.
Yeah, I mean, we have to ask parents to sign off to say, I give them a Tylenol. But we're not gonna ask a parent to say, yeah, you can go ahead and hand these out to my kid. Do we need to? Because it's, I don't know.
Do we generate reports, like, is a parent called or emailed when medical intervention happens with the nurse? Or like an encounter?
Generally, certainly, and absolutely, if it's non-typical, for someone getting their daily dose of,
Right,
right,
your asthma inhaler or something?
So, Adam, can I jump in?
please, yeah.
We didn't get into it like what we would do to develop a plan. We just said if you decide to go in this direction, philosophically, people we met with based on the work the community council did and the research that we've done, we prepared to develop a plan if they chose to go in that direction. I'll be really clear on that piece. And so we haven't got that far along into that. I came here this evening just to present some of the research, present some of our conversations, and Maddie and Delaney and I talked a little bit about, like, we very much want to align ourselves where appropriate between administration and community council and work with students. And this was strongly supported throughout the student body, strongly supported at community council. And so we feel obligated to listen to the student voice and partner with them, and then bring it to our attention, your attention here, and then wait for future guidance. That's kind of.
So I've added, first of all, our fellow board, I've added an action items list. Item number 2 is legal opinion about age of consent and potential district liability.
Any other questions? I have one.
Oh, actually, I just want to say, I just want to clarify that, yes, actually, if the schools provide condoms, it is coming out of the school budget, so we would have to pay for it. Yeah, it was just something that Mrs. B had said, I just want to clarify, that, yes, you could be.
Unless that's why we just increased the nurse's salary, because she's going to have to buy them herself.
Yes, and if we do go down this path, I want to say we should probably write a policy that it do go to the school nurse or through guidance, and teachers aren't handing them out.
Yeah, so to clarify, the community council did not think there would be a new line item, but our existing nurse supply line would have to fund that. So that
Make
was
sure it can.
correct.
Laura,
John? Oh, can you hear me?
yes.
Okay. I don't know if anyone other than the nurse is truly qualified to hand it out if it's a medical issue. They're under FERPA and HIPAA, and I also think it's a pretty relatively inexpensive item compared to water at the school costs $1 or $2, and you can it's readily available. This item is relative. It's available, and it's not something that we're handing to students because they need it immediately for school property, like a Band-Aid. So I just feel like the nurses are the only ones that really fall under medical opinions and guidance.
And that might be a question for legal.
My comment is, to repeal the policy, probably we should consider writing a new policy or keep the same name, but change the title. If we are gonna allow this or promote this, and to give this framework, the plan to be implemented, like what Laura's concerned, with the nurse meet the whatever legal standards might exist, and put some framework in the principal guiding document, so that my team can implement a plan and everyone has clear guidance on what the boundary conditions are.
There'll be a procedure associated with the policy.
Yeah, as is today. That sound reasonable? Way to
There's-
tackle this?
Yeah,
John?
yes,
Hold on a second, Laura.
I think it would be reasonable to ask Mike and his team to suggest a policy to
Yeah.
put in place the safeguards that they thought was appropriate, now we can work from there.
Can I ask the board's opening opinion about this topic?
That's a good question.
That's about.
I want to hear from legal. before I make a-
Hold on, Laura was trying to say one more. Laura, go ahead.
I'm just concerned not only about consent, but about sexual harassment. Other schools might have instituted a policy where they're handing these things out as a public service, which is sort of what we would be doing. But there have been a lot of developments on sexual harassment and consent. So I think when you're talking with your legal opinion, can you look under what kind of liability we're opening up to the school for sexual harassment and consent?
Can you say more? I'm not, or maybe another board member can help me. I'm not making the connection between handing out birth control devices and sexual harassment.
I know for okay. Well, if sexual harassment has such a narrow definition where you can't hardly talk about certain issues openly without crossing those lines, and then we're bringing in something to the school which may or may not be as discreet as we would like it to be, or as we might envision it to be. I'm just
So a nurse says to a student, hey, I think maybe I need to offer you a condom. You're afraid that that offer by the nurse could constitute sexual harassment in a narrowly construed way. Is that?
No, I'm not concerned about the nurse so much. I'm concerned about having these items readily available and distributed throughout our school, and what will happen to them, where they'll end up, and
I think maybe what she's saying is that if a kid has ready access to a condom through the nurse, they can go and potentially, there could be potential more harassment of another classman.
Or coercion,
Or
is that what she's trying
coercion,
to
maybe
say, like sexual
coercion.
coercion, like the boy goes up to the girl, like, look what I got.
Yeah,
Look
let's
what's happening
go,
up
you know?
Yeah.
Maybe
Vice
that's what
versa,
she's
you
saying.
never
I
which
know.
way it's gonna roll.
Maybe I'm more coercion.
That's what I took that to mean.
That's what I was
I think
thinking.
that's,
So I'm hearing is the need for a legal opinion that covers all of our bases liability wise for the
Yes.
potential policies.
And then if we were going to hear more, what would be the need for this to happen from our educational institution versus organizations that already have this in place and procedures to deal with that, or referring back to the parents? I mean, I know no kids want to talk about this with their parents, but maybe that's why they should.
you can't hand out a Tylenol to a kid, but the nurse can hand a condom out to anybody. What do we, I don't know, that's where I think I'm like, what does that mean? Without parental.
Yeah, and this is squarely in the board's purview for policy writing and your opinion. The guidance really is based on the board's prerogative. There is no guidance for you folks that I can provide.
Let me add that the title is the distribution of condoms and other birth control devices. Well, condoms are a lot more than birth control. They're also disease prevention devices. So then there's other things besides birth control devices that also are disease prevention, sexually oriented devices. So we're talking about what are we that we're trying to achieve here. Maybe there's a class of items to be considered beyond condoms. If we're gonna go there, we might as well cover everything that is sort of reasonably cost effective and effective, rather than just condoms, because, you know, we're not gonna hand out IUDs, we're not gonna hand out prescription pills,
The nurse
right?
needs a bigger
I mean,
salary.
there's a whole lot of- Right? But, you know,
So,
face,
no, we're
face,
not.
face shields, okay, that's a thing, right? So I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
So, John, we looked at it through a safety, health, and wellness component from the admin level in partnership with the community council putting this proposal through. And so that's kind of where our viewpoint is. And so we're just providing our take as of now and then waiting for the guidance, and I'll wait for the superintendent and the board. Now he hasn't even done her first board report. And this is, look at this. Big one.
Well, okay. What's the direction to?
Well, I think you need to get a sense from your board whether they even have interest in pursuing a
Right.
change of this policy. Because if there's no interest in pursuing a change, then we don't need to do all the research and effort.
Fair enough. How about this question? Is anyone fundamentally opposed to what this is trying to achieve from a health and safety perspective?
I have major concerns from and not religious, which is the con that was noted here, but because of a situation that we've experienced, I think you're opening a major issue, allowing these to be distributed where there are non-consenting minors. I just don't think we should take liability, especially because there are places there are things in place for the protection of people, and there is training that those entities have. That do we need that liability?
I want to hear from the lawyers about the liability. That's,
I'm just wondering if this is a solution to search of a problem. Because they're kind of available now.
cheap.
You know, I've come from an environment, I grew up in an environment where teenage pregnancy was a huge issue. A big issue. And you want to make these available, although you do, and I'm not advocating for, you know, what I think repeal of this policy would do. I don't know. I would have to be convinced to change it. Because what I'm hearing is the student can request it if they want to. They have to go to the school nurse. Here at this point.
Right
Well,
now,
we're
they
part
Well,
of
they
it,
have
you know,
to.
Right now,
have to
they
leave.
can't.
Well, now they can't. See, I don't know what form to take. I'm with the overall ability for students to attain. It doesn't encourage more sex. It just doesn't. It just provides an ability to, practice safe sex. And as you said, it's more than just preventing pregnancy. It's selfish. So kids are gonna have it anyway. So what form that takes or what protocol we use, I don't know. We could debate that. And I think, yeah, maybe we should talk to someone, but overall, I'm with, student being able to attain.
Yeah. Um, I'm okay with repealing it as long as we replace it with something that's similar to what Mike says, school nurse, counselor, and or a social worker, whoever the qualified people are, that's part of those should be the ones to handle, not just any teachers, I think, is what the original proposal was. They wanted any teacher to just be able to, that's ridiculous. It has to be somebody that has knowledge of the topic, right? And, the whole sex ed part of things, so.
Well, I'll start with my two fundamental assumptions, which is all high school pregnancies are unwanted pregnancies. And the sex is happening. And I agree with Mike that our self-reported activity rate seems to be way out of whack with the rest of the United States average. So I'm we're underperforming in this area, if you will. But given those two assumptions, my interests are preventing unwanted pregnancies, which would be all of them in high school, and preventing the transmission of STDs. So whatever we got to do to, along the lines of what community council started, finish this so we are doing better than we are now.
But is it a school job? Right? So is it our job to prevent that public health crisis, or is it the job of a public health entity? And I stand, again, you've got a situation where you have 18-year-old students, you hand that 18-year-old condom, and he goes and has sex with a 15-year-old in the bleachers, that's a felony. I think this is very scary for us to be enabling a felony.
And my final assumption is that's going to happen whether we handle the condom or not. A, and B, schools have had a major role in public health since their inception in the United States. It is a fundamental role of schools to improve the public health any way it can. And they've done many things over the years. Some we would think are extraordinarily intrusive today, because that's how things get done.
Laura?
Can you hear me? Sorry. I agree with Christine. I think it's an unnecessary liability to take on as a school when there are other organizations that are already trained and talented and waiting to assist students with these difficult decisions. And it's an item that costs 50 cents. It's not like we're giving them something they're not allowed to buy. It's everywhere, all sorts of stores, Targets, you name the store, it's for sale at many places in our town, and it costs 50 cents. A cup of coffee at the cafeteria costs $1.50. This is, I don't see, it's not that I'm against students having these things, they're readily available, and yet if we hand them out, we're taking on a liability, which we don't need to.
Okay. I think that, I think it's a question as to how much liability we're actually taking on. I could hear the argument, but there may be protections in law that allow schools to do this without being a causation of some bad act as a result of the distribution. Hold on. I don't know that to be true, but it might be. This is Stephanie's question. This is why talking to legal is important. I think that it's also it would be disrespectful for us to, without that due diligence, to just ignore something that has come up through a community council process that's part of the culture, without its due course, okay? I think, like to see from others' points, that if this can be done with limited liability and help offer an opportunity to improve the health and safety of the students' well-being, then we should seriously consider it. I think that for community council recommendation, try to anticipate just a future constructive criticism, that just repealing a policy, that you might want to consider offering a draft of what's a better policy to have, like not just repeal the prohibition, then it sounds like free for all. But to Mike's interpretation, it's more controlled and with some rigor and some fidelity to it, and the appropriate people who are in charge. I'm not fundamentally opposed to that.
All right, so Mr. Chair, what we will do is confer with legal. I'm going to ask to Mr. Coughlin's request, ask Mike to work with our legal on drafting a draft of what could be a replacement policy. And it very well may be that we bring a legal opinion into non-public to advise the board, because liability is not something we generally talk about in public. And then the board can make a decision at that time. But it sounds like there is a split board. This will not be a unanimous decision, but we'll do our best to provide guidance to the board.
So good, do that, please. Unexpended fund balance projects, is that next on our list?
Slightly less controversial, I hope. Amy, Michelle, please.
Listen, I've been sitting for 3.5 hours eating sugar, and I have a lot of energy now.
So this evening, I'll start the discussion by saying, we've had these discussions several times. Tonight, what we're looking for from the board, similar to what the Amherst School Board did, is for you folks to identify a dollar value that you're comfortable expend, if any, you're comfortable expending from the unassigned fund balance, and that we will work towards that dollar amount, so that you don't require any further action of the board. But Michelle and Amy, would you guys like to provide any further clarification?
I would just add that you have the most recent unassigned fund balance estimate. I would just remind the board that until midway through July, the fund balance isn't official. So, there's still room for movement, and I included a note in the most recent projection that that movement could even be additional expenditures that are released. So at this point, the projection for the unassigned fund balance is a little bit over $1 million. Of that, 605,000 is in the expenditure category, which would be at the board's disposal to support the year-end projects. Additional items, I know the other meetings, the question was raised regarding warrant articles and how those would be funded. So there is a warrant article for the revolving fund, $85,000 that would come out of fund balance. Although the expenditure side is the only portion of the fund balance that can be used to support the year-end projects, the fund balance closes at June 30th, and then the total unassigned fund balance becomes available to support warrant articles in the next year. So the 85,000 could be supported by the revenue or not, which is excess revenue of 312,000. So that won't need to come out of the expenditure side of the unassigned fund balance. I don't know if that was helpful to share that information.
So in short, there's $1 million available roughly and $272,000 worth of potential projects. Is that the?
605,000 available to spend.
And the current project list is consent item 6.
And Roger's here if there's any questions about those. I will add one note, the paving repairs, we originally thought the whole front paving section that was not done as part of the 10-year Gale report was going to be $100,000. Now it's $1 million. So, so this $100,000 is patchwork in some specific areas. It's not the entire, what would have been 5 or 6 years ago, a significant amount more. Now, paving has not gone up 10 times. I think that was a low number because that number was from 10 years prior. But with that said, I don't want anyone to assume that we're doing all of the paving work that needs to be done at Souhegan for $100,000.
And if I could,
That's correct. Actually, I took the Gale report. The Gale report had, 4 sections broken down, and it comes in, the entire property comes in at 1.1 million as far as for all of the paving. So Adam's correct, that 100,000 will just be patchwork throughout the property.
And the paving, that's completely redid. Let's rip it up, regrade as needed, re-rock it, and then re-pave it.
Yes, I sent out a specific specification for bus traffic, because what I've noticed here throughout my time at Souhegan is buses travel everywhere. And we want to make sure that it's just the right pavement for where we have buses or just heavy equipment travel. So the quote is for heavy traffic throughout the property. We can always reduce that by limiting buses to certain areas, but it just be with signage and stuff like that.
How many feet are you talking about in total? Do you have that number?
It's about 220,000 square feet.
That's just existing.
That's
Is
existing.
there any proposal to add anything else new anywhere? Do we need?
No, I don't have any proposals for that. We just want to be careful adding new pavement. We're just gotta be careful of stormwater protection.
Yeah.
Just because as you add pavement, we have to have drainage underneath just for a place for the water to go.
The number's pretty accurate. I think it's a good number. I mean, not good in terms of the amount.
Yeah, yeah,
Not a fun number.
It's an accurate.
So, quick question, the locker rooms, which we put 75,000 into the budget, which passed. I see there's an additional, it says 22,000 estimated cost. Is that additional? Like there's something about 97, what does this all mean?
The locker, the 75,000 came from our proposals from 2.0.
Yeah,
I actually took that, I went out to a locker vendor, and it's coming in at 75,000 plus the 22,180.
so we need to put that in then if we're gonna
That's
do it.
correct.
We have to, kind of have to.
As with everything right now, materials cost is what's.
Yeah, to kill it, huh? Okay, so that's kind of a need to if we're gonna follow through on the budget item. So then, can I ask one question?
Yes, please.
The repair block on building. You and I stood outside one day, Roger, and we were looking at the point block. This is additional work compared to what's in the, that 5-year, 10-year plan that we're putting money away. This is additional.
This is additional to that, yes.
That, it's not good in some areas.
That's correct. We did find a replacement block, though. They're bringing it up
Oh, you
tomorrow.
did?
We're gonna see tomorrow if it matches the dialogue.
Okay. So I know it looks bad. What is the critical need of doing this?
It's aesthetics. It's really just looking at the building and seeing just that the block is deteriorating and that we have rust from the roof coming down the sides of the building.
Mhm. Okay.
Some places there's actually moss growing as well. So what we want to do is we also want to install flashing at those corners so that we bring the water away from the building rather than running down the building.
So it won't repeat the same issue again.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Will that help some of the efflorescence that's coming through in some of the stone sections?
Yeah.
And power washing is insufficient.
Power washing will do it, but again, it's a problem that it's just roof runoff that continually will happen.
So can you do the flashing on the roof and fix that problem and then clean?
We could do the flashing, yes, and then clean it as well. And part of the blocks are actually, pieces are missing from it, so we want to try to replace the block as well. The question we have is just with how old Souhegan is, can we find a block that matches?
Right.
So does the repair actually look worse than the problem is what we're trying to figure out this week.
Yeah.
What's the exterior door replacement?
Exterior door replacement, we just want to start replacing doors throughout the property. Because we use salt on all of our sidewalks and stuff, we just have a lot of doors that are rusting out and actually need replacement.
It's not a single door.
No, it's actually multiple doors.
Fair question.
That's what it is. All batteries.
It's the retractable roof.
Oh,
Well, how much percentage of doors does 50 grand get?
Doors can be very expensive. Some doors are 10,000 a piece. We're looking at replacing the back auditorium doors. Those are the biggest doors that we have on property. So I'd be guessing if I gave you a cost, but typically door replacement exterior doors is around $10,000 for 2 setup doors.
Those are the fancy doors, take the center post out,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
extra cost.
Yeah, they're removable mullions, that's Steve's saying, just so that we can fit bigger pieces of equipment in the doors.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So these doors are.
You're a door.
They're not the glass doors that people walk in and out. These are more like back of the house doors.
They're egress doors, they're not the storefronts, they're just the exit doors, egress doors.
Yeah, okay. Okay, yes.
Update on the electronic sign, do you know if that's getting grant approval? Or is that still not known for sure?
We are expecting approval. It's been approved contingent upon meeting Davis Bacon prevailing wage requirements.
Oh, I was in here just talking about that. I understand that now.
So we unfortunately have an adjustment made to one of our quotes, so we're waiting on that. The other two are all set, so we have to do a little more work in the grant management system, but I do expect it to be approved.
Okay, and so the 47,560, I'm assuming, is the new quote.
Yeah, we're hoping, yeah, there's 3 quotes involved in this project. 2 of them are staying as is, actually one went down a little bit. This third one went up significantly, and Roger is doing some work to try to work on that particular quote to get it to a more reasonable level.
Okay.
But so that would be the high side.
That'd be the high side, but those would still be covered by the grant. So
Yeah.
we should not. need
We have
to take on that.
54,000 in the grant.
So, okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask one aesthetic question about the electronic signs. So we do have neighbors. I have seen electronic signs that, put a nice bright light in everybody's family room. Please tell me we've considered that. We're going to tone it down.
Yeah.
Roger wanted built-in pyrotechnics, but we've taken it
Right.
out.
See,
My concussion brain already thought of this. I was like, wait, hold on.
I've seen those, I've
Drive
seen those signs before.
I almost throw up when I.
And yeah, and we do have neighbors, I just want to make sure we.
That's a matter of.
So
Mike
we were
chimed in on
involved in
that.
that, yeah. We were very, very careful on what, like Amanda and Rhonda were
Worked very hard.
working to make sure they got the right sign that met kind of the expectations of the community, but it still allowed us to do what we need to do.
Nice.
So I'm confident it's the right sign, and I'm confident it's gonna be in the right location. It's not gonna be an eyesore. It's not, it's gonna be, it matches the building and it matches the community, it matches what we want to be. And, so that we were definitely aware of that. And, Steve will tell you, for me, I'm amazed on how long this is taking to get through. An electric sign, a lot of places do it, and I'm glad we're at this point, because there's been a lot of effort, just with me and Roger in 6 months, never mind all the people before us. And so we're getting closer, and I think we have the right product in the right space, and all the people have done the right thing. I'm grateful, because the people at the building will be happy, because they want it to happen.
I just remember, no one's asked the question, can it do saber animations?
You can put, I don't know if you can put the saber animation, but you can do, you can put pictures on there. So.
Put 2 quarters in it, distribute a comp.
Yes.
What's the likelihood of getting the ESSER grant funding?
Hi.
Okay, very good.
Yep.
Okay,
We did
So,
receive preliminary approval, but now we need to go through the formal process.
So is it SRF, you said? Well, who's the grant from?
It's ESER two.
Oh, that's right.
So I'm so paranoid about this. I would suggest we encumber the funds and then
Yeah.
release them once.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. That's just,
That's the recommendation, yeah.
I can't find my piece of paper. so-
It's great.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Laura, do you have any observations?
What is the status of the funding that Stephanie brought up for the county?
So that is part of the American Rescue Plan Act, which the ESSER three funds are a part of. So we're receiving funds through that particular fund. The county funds, I've reached out to the commissioner, to DOE, to New Hampshire Municipal Association, and I'm waiting to hear back from a few of those folks on more guidance. Hillsborough County was awarded $81 million, but we just don't know the allocating agency and what the process is for applying for those funds yet.
Have you talked to Megan Murray recently? Because she was the one that had kind of an idea of what was happening.
She said to reach out to the commissioner, which I did. Yep. So I will report back as soon as I have more information. The DOE indicated that they thought that there was more information coming out soon.
Yeah, this is the first time the county's really gotten money, so
Yeah.
they don't know what to
They
do.
probably
Oh,
don't.
yeah.
They're like, what do that one? They don't have the process in
Yeah,
place
they don't have
now.
the process, and they're not gonna do it quickly either.
Yeah.
We're certainly on top of it, and should there be money available, we will apply.
So are you looking for?
We're looking for ideally, you're looking for the board to pick a number. It can be anywhere from 0 to, say, $300,000. And we will spend in order based on from the top to the bottom, the kitchen water heater down to the exterior door replacement, based on the amount you approve.
In that order.
This is a priority order, correct?
So we know with the electronic signs and things that we should definitely reserve. We can always release. The locker rooms, I think we have to. Because we've already put through the budget.
Or in for a time.
Right. We gotta, we should need to put the other 22, 180 in there. Paving has been an issue.
I suppose with paving, you can do partial, take a section, clean it up,
100,000.
you know.
There's also a lot of sidewalks that have, just sunken in over the years, and the curbs that are there, you have really big lips we have really big lips at the curbs. They're just really big trip hazards as far as people coming off the sidewalks, catching your foot and actually tripping into the roadway. So that's part of the paving that I want to pick up as well. Removing that hazard.
Talk about liability. Slip, trip and fall. Those are the commercials you see in the middle of the night. Personal injury lawyer. School district, got you down, anyway. Yeah, that's obviously.
I want to be cautious to make sure we give something back to the taxpayer, because we took everything.
So I was gonna make the motion to authorize up to 272,000.
Yeah.
I'm
I'll second that.
pretty sure the ESSER funds will come through. It's about a third of the amount when returned to the taxpayer, which is well within our historical performance. It feels very comfortable to me to do that.
I know those auditory curtains have been a problem for a few years now. They keep getting thrown off and they're a problem now. Huge problems.
There's safety hazards, you got falling on people.
Right.
Or whatever their name was, man.
They are too, and they're auditorium curtains, they have to be fire protected.
Yeah.
You can buy curtains that you just spray the fire protection on each year, or you can actually buy inherently fire protected curtains. So that we never have to do that. The curtains that we're proposing is inherently fire protected, so we never have to treat them.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea
Yeah.
of spraying something into the air either and
Okay.
leaving
If you
trash
actually,
between
you take them down and you send them off. or-
somewhere to do it,
Yeah.
yeah.
But that costs a lot.
Now you gotta pay to take them down, put them up.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, so I'm looking at 272.
Yep. Sounds very reasonable to me. So we got a motion, we got a second, all right, let's call the roll.
Lori, yes.
Kristen.
Peter, yes. Yes.
Steve.
Melvin, yes.
Laura.
Taylor, yes.
Glover, yes.
And I want to thank Roger again for completing everything from last year.
Yes.
Mhm.
Echo.
All right. Revisioning process, Mr. Berry.
Right now.
Well, agenda says.
9:45 night.
All right, so I'm gonna give you the 60-second version of it for right now. So as many of you know, there's a number of guiding documents that drive the instructional practices, the philosophical practices, the mission and vision of Souhegan. The visioning process is kind of updated in a document that you guys should have received. Indicated that we went through an internal, I want to emphasize that, an internal exercise to take a look at it. And one of the questions was this: hey, the coalition does not exist. We can't keep referencing that the coalition's principles are still in effect. However, we can evolve those and consolidate and align with the Souhegan Six, with the mission and vision, right, with the essence of the coalition principles, with CBE education. And so we went through those activities to kind of determine what the staff, support staff and teachers value. And it was updated really well by Jeannie Sturgis and a group of people which I provided for you. The goal for us is to continue that conversation, to get it to a point where we can say, hey, at Souhegan, where we're at, and it's a fluid process. Here's what we're thinking about what education looks like at Souhegan. We can partner with our students, get their input. We can partner with families to get their input as we align it to the strategic vision of SAU 39. And that's not just AMS, but that's also Clark Wilkins and Mount Vernon. And so that's the exercise that we're going through right now. For me, the reason why it's important is to be able to have a message and an experience that you can communicate quickly and efficiently and consistently from support staff, teachers, admin to students and families and other people around. And with all the pieces that we have, it's just too kind of confusing. You can't narrow it in. And so our goal is to do that. And the teachers have done really good work to kind of go through a process during a COVID year to help us have this conversation.
We really just wanted the board to be updated on this because it's a pretty critical thing. So this is just trying to give you guys optics into what's going on in school.
And this isn't the first time we've heard you say this. My only question is, I'm perfect, great objective, at least that's my personal opinion. And I'm eager, I suppose, to get a peek behind your curtain a little bit to see what kind of brainstorming is produced, and I'll have an opportunity to provide feedback to have another stakeholder, the board, collectively or individually as members, maybe offer some feedback and assist in the process to the extent a member was have the wherewithal to do so.
And I think for us, it looks like, hey, when we kind of get a little farther in the process, there's some sort of presentation to the board, likely from students, parents, and teachers, like a combined effort. That's how we foresee this as we're trying to continue on this process. I'm not sure, but we're trying to just partner with people and so people are aware of what the experience looks like. And we can do a better job at that. And I think that type of effort and that type of partnership will help with some of the things that we talked about, like the branding and the collaboration, and what Adam was a little bit in the budget, you know, and people being aware of what's going on and what that experience looks like. So, but yeah, the school board is obviously a vital partner in that for us.
Is there a schedule at the end of the page in here? Like, when you estimate that?
Yeah,
Be able to
so
bring a proposal?
as a quick overview, we're gonna do some onboarding and go through the induction period with a number of administrators and kind of be able to turn over some of the work that's been done. And then we're gonna kind of take a look at our timelines. And but we're gonna talk a little bit about at our building of our admin, and then, hopefully get on the agenda for the district level,
I'm gonna say
meetings.
October or November, an update to this board.
Okay, okay. It's not I guess I could ask about point of day. Is this a before school starts
No.
objective, or a something that's going to develop and really be dialed in over the course of the next year? It sounds like.
Now, for us, we need to talk a little bit more as a district admin team to get some of their input before we continue on with it at the internal level. And that's what we'll be done over the summer. And I got to transition it into other people's roles and responsibilities that are coming into the play.
Okay. Anybody want to comment on that? Yes.
My only comment is thank you. I appreciate having more detail on this because I feel like, as you know, we're a piece of the stakeholders too in this, because it has a lot to do with us.
I'd say.
Yeah, which is kind of why I have mentioned before, I would love to see a school board member being part of this process, and not saying that we have a say, but we should be a piece of the process. I mean, if you're gonna have students, you're gonna have parents involved. If you bring us along and we understand where it's coming from, when you do the presentation to the school board, we're not sitting there going like, God, this is all new. Oh my God, I gotta think about this. I would not like that shock coming to me. And I'm not sure how anyone else feels on the board. I just feel like,
So I would say that that's what we're doing.
yes, and I appreciate,
We're
but we
bringing you
don't, but
along
we
right
don't,
now.
but you're telling us what you're doing, but we don't know anything that you're doing. You know what I mean? I don't have the details of what documents you've looked at. I don't know the opinions. I don't, you know what I mean? I don't have the detail of the actual comments being made.
Well, I will say to you that,
But it was somewhere along the line. We should consider.
and I respect that. I'm just going to say to you that a school board member in the room will fundamentally change the conversation, whether we want it to or not.
And I think we can change some of that mindset if we have conversations that happen.
Stephanie, I'm gonna say, when the principal walks into the room, the conversation changes. When Adam Steele walks into the room, the conversation, when
Well, I
Christine
know
walks
what
in,
you're
it
saying.
it
I know what you're
changes, and so.
But right now, I've actually had teachers tell me the school board does not want to hear what teachers have to say. I have had
Now,
teachers say that to me.
So,
And
and
that,
I hear you, and I think,
it shocks me
So-
and makes me upset.
well,
I mean,
and so I hear you, and so what I'll do is continue, we could have this kind of on a regular update throughout this process. And then we can figure out appropriately,
And
when to weave the board into it a little more, farther along, and that's.
Yeah, and I appreciate
We're not trying to
you
hide.
I want you to know that I'm hearing you. Right?
Yeah.
Give me a chance to speak my piece, all right? I am hearing you because I sit on the board of directors for Health Trust. Big organization, huge budget, like $400 million a year. And I'd like to believe I can walk in one of their meetings and they'll just continue on with their business. Not how it works. They, I can sense that the tenor has changed. And so my feeling is I've got an executive director that reports to us, that's their job, is to run those things and report to me. And the reality is that sometimes, and I'm becoming less filtered because I'm tired.
We should do this more often.
You should get me this. I think it is fair to say that sometimes people promote their individual perspectives and objectives, not the collective good, when they have access through back channels or side channels. I see it happen.
That's true. I'll agree with you on that, absolutely.
So what I want to have happen is a chance for you guys to see the process in a way that doesn't affect the process and still results in the best possible outcome, while not eroding my responsibilities that you guys have given me as superintendent, but also giving you the confidence I'm doing what you want me to do. So I hear you, I'm just not sure how to.
I hear you. It's not, it's like from the beginning, it may not be the right place to work in there, I get that.
Why don't I offer a solution so we can move on and achieve the goal, which is to what you suggested. Keep it on our agenda. And as you have more substantive update, just provide it. These hyperlinks to the source documents, that was new, that's great. The next time you have the brainstorm wheel picture, whatever it comes out, a little outcome, give it to
Yeah.
us and we can offer you feedback. And you can take it back into your
Yes.
room and incorporate it into your further discussions.
Well
Yeah, that works.
Yes,
That works.
you.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Next. Goals. Yeah. Do we have a list of our brainstorms from last couple meetings ago somewhere? Probably it's nice.
There were two from April. At least two that I wrote down, or that I recorded. They were internal communication, which I believe was board internal communication.
Yes.
And study COVID implementation for future use. So I typed verbatim, I don't remember the exact context. Also, Mike, I think we're all set with you at this point, if you want to. I mean, you can stay. We're all set. Those are the two that we got through on April 2021.
Anyone want to contribute to the board goals?
No, but Laura says that she's muted and she can't, I think she might have been trying to say something.
Laura is not. Oh, she logged back in. She must have disconnected and reconnected.
Oh, okay.
And you mind managing?
She had
No,
to
like
say
she has
something
to-
nice.
She had to sit in the middle
of the room.
Visited the senior.
Okay, John?
Yes.
Okay.
Laura.
I had some comments to make about the meetings of of Mike Berry. And that was that Souhegan was built on community. The community came together, and right now the school board is elected by the community to represent the community. And I don't feel that CBE was ever vetted through the community. CBE was never presented as something. It's just been pushed upon our community by the administration. Like it or love it, or leave it or whatever, it is what it is. And to include CBE in a basic document, I just don't think we should be that specific. I don't think the current grading system is part of our founding documents. So I just don't think that CBE should be integrated in any of our founding documents for those reasons. And I feel like the community should be represented by the board.
I'm listening, I'm just taking notes. Where we left that, Laura, was that we're gonna let Mike and his team do their work with a regular agenda update on our agendas so that we have the benefit of a pulse on what they're doing, and they've committed to providing the outputs of their work. And so we'll be able to see along the way and offer feedback as to things we like or things we don't like or things, hybrid changes we might want to see as representatives of the community. And it seemed amenable to the people in the room here, and we'll see where that goes. And if you couldn't hear us before, the rough generic schedule is maybe we'll have something drafty comprehensive maybe by mid-fall. But along the way, we should be seeing how that's shaping up.
No, I could hear you fine. I never lost connection. I was muted by Zoom. So I just feel that CBE, this is my feedback. CBE he's saying that he wants to incorporate CBE into our founding documents. And we never had a grading system in our founding documents. I realize it has yet to be done and they're still working on it, but I just wanted to make that point.
Okay, point made. So now we're talking about our board goals. And I'd asked everyone if anyone had something to contribute to that. I'll start. So I was the one who had said internal communication. I thought that then, I haven't been on the board as long as Steve's been on the board, but been around a bit, and I've seen boards cower in fear of the public right to know law to the point where they're paralyzed and afraid to talk to each other out between meetings. I think it's a real shame. I made an effort to talk to each one of you individually before this first meeting. That's a lot of work for one person to do. So I would like to see us all participate in that with each other, maybe led by the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary on a rolling basis to how did you like Steve's presentation? How did what last meeting go? I just, in the meeting, I heard I was contemplating, and here's some ideas I have for whatever the issue. I'd like to see us internally communicate so that when we are setting an agenda with the superintendent and all of his team, I mean, they're all working together. They got BAs and principals and assistant superintendents and all these people coming together to figure out what they want to go, what direction they want to go. That's a strong administration. I think that's great. We've empowered that. But I think our internal communication could the chair and the vice chair could come together and say, well, our board really wants to see these things on the agenda. It's not me as the chair, whoever's the chair saying that. It's like, we've been talking to each other. These are the questions that we have. This is the information that we're demanding right now, and that can help match and meet the administration. No, doesn't mean we always get everything we want, but I think that's a tool that we haven't had in a long time. So that's what I mean by internal communication as a board goal, to do that better.
I get you.
Okay. I think there's another piece to internal communication, which is we're in planning meetings and or whatever. I think it's important for two of us to be in the room. Chair and vice chair in the agenda setting meeting as an example. Someone to bounce an idea off of, two brains on an issue, two different experiences and expertises to come together. And I mean, there may not be always be consensus in that. We have a leadership structure, a chair makes a final decision if there's some sort of controversy, but having an opportunity to not be on an island and being alone all the time, I think is an internal communication that would be really beneficial. And then the outputs of those meetings could more easily be distributed among the rest of the members. So that everyone is sort of constantly informed, contemporaneously informed as information is available. That's another piece of internal communication. I think we could do better. And the last one, which I mentioned earlier, which Adam has started, but maybe we should manage our own, is a sort of a business tracker. I know this has been half tried before with not great success, and maybe it'll be another failure again, but action items from the meeting, put on regular updates. Maybe that's a no-brainer. Some of these other ones, public comments that we get should go on there, and maybe the first order of our business in our meeting should be a review of the old business so that things don't constantly be forgotten. I think that's a way we can track our business internally and let people know that their comments are being heard. And there might be our own comments. Sometimes if we all make comments and they just fall into the wind, nobody ever remembers, and it's just as if the meeting never happened. So those are the prongs of internal communication, I think, is what a board could do, could attempt to do, to try to do what it can for its community in support of its administration. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so, yeah, the action, like an action tracker, what do you call it, business tracker or something that has action items, I wouldn't mind having that list almost attached to the general, we said old, but a lot of agendas have old business, it almost would be like, here are the open action items from, and even have here's the follow through. Where, you know, where it's appropriate, you know. And then, we can't put on there, so
Remember, we tried that last year, right?
we never actually put it on here. You know what I mean? So it's the accountability that it's showing up on, it's like all those agenda items that we make sure we follow up, like, why is that still up? sitting
Keep it
there?
up to date.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah, and I think if it shows up on an agenda, it will. Yeah, and I get the internal communication. I think it would help us like, work together as a board if we probably talk with each other more, which I don't think we usually do. But we could, every once in a while, I'll see Steve at Market Basket or something, or whatever store they go. You know, I don't ever see George, but you know.
Now, let's not forget, last year was a difficult year
Last
because we
year
didn't have.
was
in
true. I'm
person.
not- no.
Now we
There
have
is
got
no
the
finger pointing.
privilege.
I don't
No,
know.
I'm not saying, I'm not getting defense, I'm just saying that, you know, now we're in a collaborative, you know, situation where we can actually have conversations before meetings, after meetings, whatever,
Right.
you know, and establish that
A
extra
rapport.
level of, of
A
rapport,
rapport.
exactly, where we couldn't do that for the last 15 months.
So I will say our entire school system, on the administrative level, is managed via Trello, right? I mean, from board meetings down to committees to pretty much everything that we do. So the Souhegan board meetings Trello board has the board assignments list that we did earlier today. It's got your board goals that you're working on right now. It's got an action items card that has 3 things on it already that have already been also placed on future agenda items as we're sitting here. So we will not be successful if there's some other spreadsheet or some, I mean, we
No,
all
but
work.
we keep that on there and it just kind of shows up as a.
Yeah.
It'll keep us.
Something to
things
keep,
falling off
something
the-
that any one of us could go and be like, okay.
Well, and I have gotten better at making sure these things get followed through. Like, I mean, there's no excuse beyond, it just has taken me some time to build systems that work well.
And then there's 3 school districts.
No excuses, I mean, seriously, no excuses. It's just taking me some time to get a system that actually has us all tied together and works well.
Well, and I'll say that, again, reiterate something about this, that it's really, it's not meant to be antagonistic in any way. It's meant to, for us to kind of understand each other, well, internally, maybe leverage our skills a little bit, but more importantly, to understand each other and get a list of concerns and questions about any given issue so that you can see it anytime you want and know and have some confidence that it's actually coming from all of us. What George might be busy, for example. So George gives me 5 things that popped into his head. Well, I can write those down and put those on list form. Like that's the kind of working together that we're teamwork. This is what we're trying to teach our kids is that collaboration and teamwork is really important. And even though we are elected individually, even though the public has a right to know when we're in meetings, they certainly didn't intend. They cannot believe they would have intended us never to talk to each other and get to know each other and leverage our skills in a collaborative sense. I mean, if you talk about a hill to die on, that would be a hill that I'd be willing to die. I think we give it a go.
I just suggest caution with that, and I don't, you know, all the reasons why, but I
Yes,
will,
we want to avoid serial meetings. You said, she said, this isn't about hearsay. This is why I think the leaders of the board would facilitate the phone calls and then get together and pool the concerns and questions and put them on the Trello board and publish them publicly. I mean, there's nothing to be hidden here. If it requires publishing something to make people feel comfortable, then we'll publish it. Here's the questions of the first week's phone calls. Yep, here's the updates, week 2. Publicly viewable, provide comment, it's fine. So no one can be forced to participate in that, but I'd like to encourage it, but try to facilitate.
other board goals.
Yes, Steve.
So I know we talked and I was a big right to know advocate guy. And so there's gonna be a lot, when you talk about that.
No, yeah.
And so I just say, there's no reason why we can't communicate. What's clearly allowed is sharing of facts. Where you start getting into the gray area, where boards wind up in court, is when it's influence discussions. When you start discussing opinions and trying to change others' opinions. That's where you're making decisions behind closed doors. And it's great for a board to share information. It is easy for a board to slide into secretive decision making. So the issue isn't that we shouldn't do it. The issue is, it's very hard for any group of humans to remember where that line is in the gray area and not cross it. So I'll just say, yeah, okay, I'm in communicating, but we all gotta be very careful when we wind up in Superior Court one day. When we forget, we'd like to know what goes on.
Fair point. I mean,
And the troll board is a great place to share facts, and not have persuasive arguments. They have to remain in this room.
thanks. Laura, do you have a board goal commentary?
I like the communication. I like the idea of action items and lists and, yeah, having the chair and vice chair, maybe one's an alternate, but yeah, I think that's an excellent arrangement. Great idea.
Oh, sorry.
All right. So along the communication lines, but this is about external. I think we can do something, I said this before, something like the Amherst School Board has done, and I don't know if this communication committee group or whoever, or whether, or how it should be written, because how does the Amherst School Board write theirs monthly to the citizens?
So one exception to the right to know law is the drafting of things that will become eventually public, like an article like that. So they do communicate about what they're going to put in the article. Generally, the chair and vice chair take the lead on drafting it. Ask for feedback from anybody else, then it's published.
Okay.
And we used to do that too. In the old days, Jeannie and I would draft the letter from the board, and we would circulate it to see if anyone had any objections. So we'll like take this out or change one word. It wasn't a major redrafting. And if you go back and look in the ancient paper copies of the Amherst Citizen, you'll see many letters from the Souhegan board where there were only 6 people signing at that time. Because occasionally someone had an issue, they want their name on.
Oh, interesting.
I think chair and vice chair generally take that mantle.
I think
Yeah.
we should be doing that, because we're gonna have things coming up.
I'm not even a part of it. I don't even see
Yeah.
it until I get the citizen, do I know what they've written, so.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great idea. And the way, the way Amherst was doing it, I don't know if they're still doing it this way, but rather than to spread the load would be, someone would be assigned it for a month or team, a couple of people, and then that would change. So that everyone gets an opportunity at drafting something so that it's not just 1 or 2 people all the time, every month, bearing that load. So I would say anyone who is interested in drafting would be, please take the opportunity to take your turn at the drafting, please. That'd be a huge help. Especially if the topic of conversation is something you actually have some professional experience in, a particular passion for. So I'm down with all that. Sounds good. We should do more external communication.
And then there's external.
Yeah.
One more proposal.
Yes, absolutely.
So this is more concrete, is supporting the science classroom in the budget. The science classroom renovations.
What does that translate to, like the goal that the board could do versus the goal that like administration would do?
Well, it's one that right now I'm working with as a Souhegan 2.0 as part of JFAC, and with Roger and with Carl and with Mont, and we're putting it together and trying to get what renovations
see.
should look like in the budget to support the science.
The
program.
board is much more involved in that than you and I. The board really is.
Okay,
Definitely is.
I see it now. Yeah.
But I want to make sure that we support it, when we ever decide to put in the budget. In September.
Here's another one that's not my thought, but it came to me in some of the conversations, which is the board doesn't have a budget. Who does the board have a budget? Meaning, here's what, meaning, it might be beneficial for, I don't know if this even the board has to do this, but it's a third party. That's not the administration, maybe it could be the board, could be the not, could provide surveys to our community and our students and our teachers in an effort to solicit feedback that is honest and correct to that person from a largest number of people possible, and avoid fear of reprisal or fear of being non-anonymized, even against promises, and try to add some legitimacy and more participation in understanding what the constituencies are really doing.
So I can respond to that. The previous iteration of the 4 chairs just asked me to look into finding qualitative surveys that can be sent to parents and students about ask their feelings about their school, their classroom, their teacher, all of those things. And so Harvard did a study and developed something called tripod surveys that have been proven to be scientifically valid. They're done by a third party. We don't have access to it meets what you're talking about. So Christine and I are looking into that with a plan to update the board in probably August or September. So to that point.
You're going there. Great.
What I want, what I think the board wants is the same thing. I would like some qualitative feedback on our schools, and then even more specifically on our teachers, which I know that's controversial. The tripod folks have developed surveys that have been proven to be valid scientifically.
And the other group to survey would be our alumni, in my opinion.
Are you doing home and is there any teachers as well?
Teachers.
Teachers,
I mean,
And so, I'll double check,
I mean,
not that I'm aware of.
it seems like if you could, for the third party independence, and if the people putting in the survey have confidence in it, then you could survey anybody. And it's just a matter of who do you want surveyed and what kind of questions do you want?
So we will follow up to the SAU board on that because that was a request.
Right.
The SAU board chair. Yes,
Yeah, and alumni would be an interesting.
including alumni, including teachers.
Yeah, right. The parents and community, I mean, I don't know, there's a lot of.
I do want to say we ask a lot of opinions. Right now.
I know. Yes, I know, and I don't pretend to have all the answers, but.
Because we,
Okay, now we got budget.
in all honesty, we ask a lot of opinions around here. We get a lot of feedback, so I don't feel that we're very out of touch. But to your point, one thing that is a missing part is alumni.
And one thing that I've heard on the street is some teachers are afraid to respond.
Yeah.
So, and the DOE put out this thing called Bright Futures, which is to all parents, all teachers, all students, everybody that they put out statewide. It's been public. We just push on that. I think it just came out my Friday.
Yeah, you put it up.
Yeah.
John,
Yes,
speaking of end of the year surveys, have we sent them out to our graduating seniors to find out if they're pursuing what they would like to and their experience at Souhegan?
no.
But I mean, isn't that part of our strategic vision? One of our metrics is feedback at the end of the year of graduates. So are we planning to do that, or we're not doing it this year for COVID, or I'm just curious.
Metrics. We've just started tracking outcomes of seniors in the last year with the
national.
clearinghouse.
Yes.
But we really don't have any, to John's point, we've not started doing any qualitative feedback whatsoever. We ask teachers how they feel about me as superintendent. We ask teachers how they feel about their principals, and we use that in our part of the evaluation process. But we don't do anything with parents, nothing with students, nothing with graduates yet. That's qualitative in nature. And to that point, we are all interested in doing that. I will tell you that right
And
now,
Yes, Laura?
No, I'm sorry, that was my fault. No, Adam, please finish. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, now is not the time to ask recently graduated seniors. I'm just gonna say that.
How's your experience?
The response rate will be very, very low. It's a good
I
time
did notice,
for the completely.
Go ahead, Laura.
I did notice that a survey went out, because I'm a parent, to students. Part of the student questioned how it was worded in I didn't think an ideal way. Did they think their mental health declined over the year? And I felt like it was a leading question. I also felt it was a little intrusive. That perhaps you could have been more, or whoever sent out the survey. I wasn't sure does a teen really have the qualifications to evaluate their own mental health? For me, I just thought it was a weird question, and I know that you were just, or whoever sent it out was just trying to get a general feel, maybe a red flag or something. But I thought it had some issues.
Well, so 2 quick points. First, that was sent out by a student, Maddie Daniels, on behalf of the community council as a part of the reopening task force to gather feedback from students. So she wrote the survey and distributed it. The second issue, which is related to the first, is we are prohibited by law from sending out non-academic surveys to our students. Not allowed to do it. The one exception to that is the YLJB, YRBS, MCTA, pick 4 letters. The YRBS. So when we need feedback from students, we generally have students send out the questionnaire because that's not us asking the information. So this is student surveys. The other issue, we didn't even touch on this with survey data. The current students were actually not allowed to send out non-academic surveys without having parents opt into allowing their student to take the survey, which is onerous. The students we most likely hear from are not the ones that have parents that will say yes to taking the survey, right? So it really invalidates the results.
Now you have a bias sample.
Correct.
Not applicable to alumni. Thank you.
Exactly.
Well,
Okay,
I'll-
Adam,
Yes, go ahead, Laura.
I'm sorry. I was just,
Okay.
so this was sent by students, so it doesn't have to satisfy the same survey laws that other groups do? I'm just trying to understand this. I'm sorry.
That's my understanding. If students survey each other, it's a student survey. It's not us sending out a survey.
Okay, thank you.
I just wouldn't, I know I don't want to beat this thing up, but it's new. I didn't think this was more goal territory. I thought it was more the meeting schedule, proposed meeting schedules, which we didn't really get to. But I noticed we don't have a meeting in July. And I thought, well, that's, we have a lot of new administration coming on board. Mr. Chamberlain, I mean, Amy's been around, but new role, right? The domain leaders, Mike and his teams are working on the founding documents and all of that work. We had the strategic vision that kind of got mothballed for a year because everyone was freaking out about COVID, rightly so. It made sense to have a meeting in July for the purpose of orienting our new folks to our strategic vision, reminding us what that is, developing the metrics that are already in there, but maybe start putting that together where we actually have some data and making sure there's a good alignment for that so that when Mike and his team go and do their work, so that when the summer retreats or the professional development, the budgeting process and the goal setting starts in earnest, you have the input of the board about things that are important in the strategic vision and that should be seriously considered for the next school year and beyond. And July seemed like it was kind of dead for meetings, so why not? Just throwing it out.
Again, from my old man history hat, historically, it's been impossible to get a quorum in July. Every 4th of July, vacations, you'll never get 7 board members, much less 7 board members and all the administrators you wish. Let them try.
How about the idea is to do that as soon as practicable? Or
What are
just
you doing tomorrow night? Still June.
it's still June. Yeah.
So
I think that one's on tomorrow.
I am going tomorrow, that's good, that's a fair point. So I will say right now, the August meeting, has no agenda of any kind, nothing. No, I mean, well, the draft replacement policy for the contraceptive things, that, I've already added that, but, to that point, there's nothing else. To Steve's point, the reason there's not usually meetings in July is because people are everywhere. And that's usually the month that we circle for administrators and folks. Go do your thing and don't worry about kind of breather for. Now, we're giving these next 2 weeks for folks as well. So to that point, July this year could be an exception to that. But I would also say, every time I've said, is this our strategic vision? I've still gotten kind of, yeah. And so we're moving forward. We already have plans for our retreat this summer, or what we're doing to prepare for the budget. Like Amy's already developing documents in preparation for the budget. So I think July in some ways is too late. In other ways, it's not, you know, I'm of 2 minds and I'm too tired to say it's a simple, so.
Well, okay, maybe it's not even a meeting. So I think what I've been hearing, talking to the folks here in the room, one-on-one, is that there's like the Trello board is rich with, as you've shown us before, but I was looking at it too, and you know, we've just put together some. We've always talked about these metrics, but there should be some charts and graphs about. I mean, I know Laura's brought up about dual enrollment in AP. You know, where's the chart and graph that goes with that?
Can I make a suggestion?
You know, and on and on. It's just, yeah, you may, but I don't want to use that as to illustrate the point. It's like, where can we start putting these pieces together so that when we do make communications to the public, when we do make arguments to support budget proposals, that we actually have something, we have a baseline, we can pull some history, to the extent we have data historical, we can show where it was and where we are, and then start persuading the public that where we're going is right and just, and they should continue to invest. That's where this whole, I think, this idea of the metrics is really centered on, and we don't really have a good handle on that.
Okay.
That's what really is driving this motion.
So I'm going to suggest that perhaps the chair, the vice chair, myself, and perhaps Mike schedule a day together. Just to go deep, plan out our year, go over all these things in detail, because I get a sense with a new board chair this year that there's a focus on some things that need to be resolved. I'm not sure board time is the appropriate or best use to resolve some of those things. So perhaps 3 and/or 4 of us could set literally a date aside and
Yeah, so if we could, yeah, because I think if we can talk about some of the key things that we keep talking about but never get to, or line them up, figure out where it goes, we don't have these meetings going.
Right.
Or we say, you know what, there is a lot going on in, you know, like October, we don't get our budget until the very end of the month, and then we're doing that really fast budget review again. Can we do a second meeting in October, which stinks for you guys because it's another meeting, but one's a budget thing and one we can cover other material, maybe we get some things earlier, or
so the purpose of the meeting would be to plan out our board year
kind of work
down to the agenda level, like,
as much as we can.
as much as we possibly can.
We have discussion items.
I think that will, it takes a place of almost like a full day board retreat, which is impractical with people who work and have lives and kids and jobs and all that. So let's try that with 3 and/or 4 of us with Mike.
That would be great, and it would be excellent if you could provide the invitees with kind of an agenda, this is the thing we're gonna try to achieve, then we could distribute that among the entirety of the board and solicit feedback. This is the internal communication, questions, goals. I'd like to see this come out. What about that? And we can take that whole list, go into it, spend the time, do the process, and then report back the results to the rest of the board, so that when we do come to a meeting and discuss it, everyone's armed with as much information as we have. And we can hopefully have a productive, efficient, and substantive discussion on the matter. I'm good?
Preaching to the choir.
Okay, great. One more question. Steve, what's the practicality of pushing the election back as far as humanly possible? Not, I don't mean that literally. I mean, pushing it back to May and out of March permanently.
The selectmen would like to do that as well. The problem is, closure years, 14. The problem is Mont Vernon. So we need to have the election on the same day in Amherst and Mont Vernon. I'm sure that Mont Vernon School Board would be happy as well. Problem is Mont Vernon selectmen start their fiscal year in January. So in my scenario, three months gambling on what the budget result's going to be. They have historically been very willing to push it later. COVID was the one great exception. It blew us all away. We never thought we would be so used to it.
Okay, my argument is we're starting the year off. We've just got the money. Everyone's focused on the pilot studies that Christine and her team are doing, implementing, starting the year off great. And at the same time, they're like, what are our projects for the next year? It's like totally schizophrenic and disjointed in my mind. You could push that off a couple of months and get everything rolling and get some data back from your pilot studies and get some feedback from the stakeholders and maybe enrollment estimates and on down the line. And by the time you get up to it, you have a much better number, you have a much better supporting data. I mean, from a school system standpoint, to me, it's very compelling.
If you're interested in
January deadlines don't move, right?
No, everything moves, everything moves
You get
proportional to
through, that's
voting,
not
yeah.
a hard
Yeah.
firm?
Yeah.
Ah, I didn't know
So
that was-
it didn't issue because of COVID, only the election.
I didn't know. I
Yeah,
thought
the
those
whole
were-
thing would move. It's always days before the election that it counts.
You have three choices, the second Tuesday in March, second Tuesday in April, second Tuesday in May.
And, okay, so then that shifts when the MS.
Yeah.
And all those other.
Yeah, everything else. It would be awesome, except for Mont Vernon town fiscal year.
So if you're serious about moving forward, you need to get the 5 families together. So
Yeah,
Mhm.
right.
the moderators and chair people of Amherst Selectmen, Mont Vernon Selectmen, Souhegan School Board, Amherst School Board, Mont Vernon School Board, 5 families. There's 10 people have to get together and discuss it. And if Mont Vernon still is not willing, either this year was a test case for them, because they waited till June 8th, just like everybody else. And somehow they made it. I still think there's still police in town, in Mont Vernon. Or,
I don't know.
The issue isn't now, the issue, it will be pushing down in town in December.
that's true. Or we suggest that Mont Vernon shift to a fiscal year basis, a July 1 fiscal year. It needs to be a vote anyway. There's no, next year's election will be in March. You have to change it at one annual meeting for the next year. So next year will be March, which could give Mont Vernon time, to also have something on their ballot. Then it could be proposed to switch to a fiscal year if they wanted to do that. But if you're serious, the 5 families have to get together and work it out.
Okay,
And I don't know why, no clue why Mont Vernon's on a January fiscal year,
They just never changed it.
and why they.
It's on a town meeting. They just never changed it.
Okay. But everybody else in the universe did.
okay,
Is that a board goal, John?
I think so, yeah. Unless anyone objects to
Move the
it.
election
Seems
day.
sensible.
But we can't have to
Yeah.
discuss it.
I mean, it's better for the budgeting, yeah.
So right now, the Trello board says the 5 families are gonna move the election to May. So
Next thing you know, the FBI.
Who has access to that board exactly?
anyone in the world.
Or to receive an update on the higher education partnership.
There isn't much to share here, and this is very quick. We have no official partnership with any higher education institution. This is part of our strategic vision, looking at a way to investigate how can we make the next step in life more affordable for many of our kids. Not our kids going to Ivy League schools, not our kids going to highly competitive schools, not our kids going to even community colleges, but in the middle, the sweet spot of students. Where AP had the lure of, you can skip ahead in college if you take AP classes. You can't do that anymore. Colleges don't let you. Dual enrollment classes. You can skip ahead in college if you take dual enrollment classes. Colleges don't let you do that anymore for the most part. What you can skip ahead with, and colleges cannot refuse, is if you have something like an associate's degree when you leave high school. That is conferred from an accredited institution. There's nothing that UNH or any other consortium schools can do to prevent you from using that. And so our belief from talking to former students is that many students who go to community colleges or entry-level colleges in the area are repeating a lot of the things they were learned at Souhegan for the most part. And spending money to do so while other people catch up. And so that tells me that most of what we're doing in our school is at the community college level, at the entry level, basic level. And if there's a way to map that in such a way that that allows our students to truly get a step ahead of their peers. Again, not our high performing kids, not our kids going into electrical engineering, not those types of students. There really could be an affordability issue associated with that. So the first institution we've worked with and we've had conversation with, but very little for the past year because of COVID, was Southern New Hampshire University. They're very interested. They have a very similar philosophy as we do, and they have a very can-do attitude when it comes to anything creative like this. UNH, which has kind of a different stature in our community, has not really done any kind of thing like this, and they just piloted it this past year with Pinkerton Academy. And so we could have a conversation with that. We've not done much besides start to do the mapping process with SNU to say which of our classes match the classes you offer, because that's the first step. If some of our catalog overlaps, we might be further along the process than we really think. And we're really leaving things on the table for a lot of our students. By the way, SNU suggested costs to confer those credits, $100 a class, which means like $2,000, between $2,000 and $3,000 for an associate's degree, if it all lined up. I'm not saying it does or it will, but if it did, you're saying an associate's degree for about $2,000 to $3,000 for a lot of our students. To me, I think that's something worth exploring. So I haven't gone far with that, not gone deep with that. We really started to when COVID happened and put the brakes on everything. But that's really the update with that.
And SNU was as busy as we were with COVID, and we had each been reaching out, and it was, we're too busy, we'll get back to you, we're too busy, we'll get back to you, so.
Does SNU actually grant associate degrees? They do.
Laura, I mean, I was thinking about calling her Laura. I'm looking at you. It's like,
On that point,
Stephanie.
The question is, are you potentially suggesting that Souhegan pays the $100 per course, or would the
I'm not even
student have?
close to having
Okay,
that
because
conversation
I
with you
think
folks as a board.
that is something we have to be very careful, because I think tax credit have a hard time absorbing college payments.
I would absolutely agree. We're not even close to making a decision yet. In my opinion, this isn't ready for board debate and discussion and approval until I even know if it's possible. So my job is to do the research, work on packaging it up for you guys, and then say, what do you guys think about this? I'm not even there yet. This is like at the barely past the brainstorming phase.
I can't imagine why it wouldn't be possible. So my niece Abby was in the pilot program that Southern Hampshire University did through VLAX. She was the first class that graduated with high school diploma and associate's degree. She was 16. That tracked right into Southern Hampshire University. She graduated at 19 with a bachelor's in English. And she spent $5,000 to do it.
I think it's much more possible than we think. SNU was very interested.
And to the point about the college is not accepting to do enrollment, so say you have a student who doesn't finish the associate program, we haven't found that in the schools that we've used, which are above community college, below Ivy League. They haven't found it anywhere. Rochester Institute of Technology was gonna take it all. Obviously, like Liberty Gordon, they take it all. So
let me clarify. So when I say, I know that colleges will take the credits and give credit for them, but many programs are now saying, great, you took, pick a class, AP Calculus,
AP Chem class.
AP Chem, for example. great, you took AP Chem, you still need to take X
And
number of
still
classes
enrollment.
with
So
us.
it's dual enrollment,
It's
yeah,
dual
so I guess it
enrollment.
depends on which degree program you
Yes.
They're
enter.
Yes.
sometimes requiring you to take the same number of classes with them to get the
Yes.
degree, even if you get to start one class higher because you have the
Yes.
dual enrollment. of AP credit.
Yes.
So that hasn't been our experience, but obviously I'm anecdotal. I only have four
And
kids.
sometimes they'll give you you'll give you a science credit, but they won't give you the chemistry credit. They become very creative to keep.
To keep their
It's the
money.
lab.
Money.
I think the lab experience is very different in their lab.
Yes.
John,
Yes, Laura, go ahead.
Adam, so how many colleges have you spoken to about when you send them a transcript that has an associate's degree and that they look at it as being larger than its parts? Because right now we're sending students with a lot of parts, like this class is dual enrollment or this class. And you're saying that when you add it together, the associate's degree is more valuable. And how many colleges have you spoken to and how do they respond differently?
Zero colleges, besides the research I found, that all of the consortium colleges in New England have to accept a conferred associate's degree as more than half or so of the progress towards a bachelor's. That's a requirement.
In other words, this is nascent.
But the consortium colleges, I think most of them were community college, if I remember correctly.
No, not at all. No. UNH, all the state colleges in New England are part of the consortium.
And a lot of private too. Yeah.
Well, my kids have been very well served for the individual classes for dual enrollment. And I think having an associate's degree option is fabulous. I don't want to lose what we have that serves well students to be able to choose their own track.
I agree, Laura, I agree with you.
We couldn't lose it. That's how we would be able to get to the associate's degree is with so many of the dual enrollment courses we already currently have.
Yeah,
So
that's
we're
why
going to
it adds on.
accomplish it.
Correct.
So you would require that someone has to be in an associate's track to pick up a few of those out cards.
Exactly, correct. My working hypothesis is that many of our classes are already at the associate's degree level, and that we're just not seeing them as dual enrollment classes because we haven't done that work with the local community college, so. I could be wrong.
Or minor tweaks might get you there.
I'm just gonna say one more thing. In my opinion, if we were able to create an environment where students who live in Amherst or Mont Vernon could go to high school with us and for a couple $1,000s leave with a conferred associate's degree,
I'll give you a perfect example. I have a
I think that's a
rising,
game changer.
I have a rising senior who has just applied. She's about done with the process for New Hampshire Career Academy instead of coming to Souhegan, because she's gonna do exactly what you're talking about.
And no offense, but she's gonna miss out on the athletic, the music, the things that are like the social part of Souhegan that make it like the high school experience.
And if she had been a Souhegan student, right, like, but.
I know,
obviously
you know
we're
what I'm
different.
saying. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
There's advantages to being in the local school.
I'm just saying there are definitely families who would see the value in what you're talking about.
Good.
My own included.
The business.
American Rescue Plan.
I don't know, I can't even.
We already talked
Ah!
Oh, is there
We already
something
talked
else?
about that.
We did talk about it.
Yeah. That's the
That was at the end of the-
That was the kind of.
I'm ready to move to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second.
We don't
You may
have
not
something
have-
like
I was gonna give you a
that.
choice, John, but maybe you
Yeah.
Yes, take a motion to adjourn, anyone?
You've already made the
Steve already,
motion.
you already
I
seconded,
second.
Renee's already got it. As far as Renee's concerned, we adjourned in that.
More than